2020 has been an interesting year in the smartphone landscape. The £300 to £400 price range has really heated up in terms of not only competition, but who's offering amazing value for money smartphones with almost all the same feature sets you'd expect of flagship smartphones. This is the Tech Travel Geeks long-term review of the OnePlus Nord, which I've been using as one of my main smartphones for over 3 months. If you don't already, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. The OnePlus Nord is, as many have said, a return to OnePlus's baseline, to its DNA. It brings a really affordable smartphone to the masses with an affordable price point and, more importantly, all the key features people are actually looking for. In 2020, it brings a lot of good value in terms of the amazing screen on it, the decent cameras, especially the selfie cameras, and great overall performance. Personally, I've really enjoyed using the smartphone. It's smaller than a lot of the current crop of high-end smartphones, whilst delivering some very fluid experience, which is brought on by a combination of great chipset, the new Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G chipset, the high refresh rate screen, it's a 90 Hz OLED panel, and the fact that the OxygenOS software experience has been tightly integrated into the overall hardware of the device. There's been a lot of tuning going on, and the overall experience is extremely fluid, fast and snappy. The OnePlus Nord comes in a selection of colours. I selected marble blue, and this is a very refreshing colour in the current smartphone landscape. It's not a super reflective or refractive aurora colour. It's more like a shallow blue that does reflect and refract without being too wow, and that really is very impressive. But most of the time I've been using the smartphone, it has been in a case, so I've been adding some bulk to it. And despite that, the form factor of the OnePlus Nord is very, very compact compared to, say, the Poco X3 NFC or other large chunky smartphones we've seen this year. Battery life on the OnePlus Nord has been very, very good in use. So in a day of heavy use, I've been comfortably getting to the end of the day with between 20 and 25% battery life. This has included gaming. I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty Mobile on the device. It has included recording video, watching video, and a lot of messaging. As I've put one of my main SIM cards in the device, that's involved quite a few phone calls too. So for the device to get to the end of the day with between 20 and 25% battery life is quite an achievement. The OnePlus Nord has a 4115 mAh battery, and through optimizations of OxygenOS and the Snapdragon 765 chipset, that's been really, really good. It is important to bear in mind that in my use, I've been in lockdown for most of the release of this smartphone. I've been staying at home and using Wi-Fi a lot of the time. But when I have been going out and about and been going for long walks with the smartphone, I've also had the chance to use 5G on it. Not long after we got the device, Lukasz and I went for a long walk with the OnePlus Nord and did find some 5G, thanks to 3. And since then I had also put in a Vodafone SIM card and achieved some pretty impressive speeds with 5G on Vodafone here in Edinburgh. Now, 5G is not a feature that many people need or want in 2020, but in the coming years it will be, and it's impressive to see OnePlus are offering that feature set of access to 5G on the device and giving some early adopters a taste of extra speed. Now, the Snapdragon 765 chipset is not a flagship one, it's not an 8 series Snapdragon chipset. But in day-to-day use, I've really not noticed a difference, even playing Call of Duty Mobile. The smartphone is fast, responsive, and handles everything I throw at it very comfortably. That's probably because it's paired with 8GB of RAM, and the storage seems to be quite fast when storing stuff to it and when reading it. So recording video at high resolution in 4K, it does very well, and it also handles other forms of media quite well too, especially audio. Sadly, there is no Courage port. There's no 3.5mm audio jack, and I'm a bit saddened by that. It's not a problem, I do have dongles and adapters. I have been using Bluetooth earphones with the OnePlus Nord, but I do sometimes miss that Courage port in my smartphones. The OnePlus Nord is an affordable smartphone priced in the UK at £350. But at that price point, you don't often get smartphones with fast charging, and the OnePlus Nord delivers OnePlus's own warp charge. That means that it charges very, very quickly, and you can have a full battery in just over an hour using the included warp charger that came with the OnePlus Nord. When not using a warp charger, it still charges over USB Type-C, but there's no wireless charging. It's one of those features that had to go with being able to get the product to this price point. One other area OnePlus have had to make a trade-off is the camera department. The main camera is great. It's a 48 megapixel sensor. It performs very well in good light, but starts to be a bit in the weak side in low light. The other cameras on the device are a bit hit and miss. The 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera does a decent job in good lighting conditions. It's great for taking panorama shots when you're out and about in the city or in the countryside. But again, in low light, it starts to get very, very noisy and grainy, and definitely has issues with bright light sources blowing out images. There is also an extra 5 megapixel depth sensor. You don't get to use that as a camera, but for taking portrait shots, it does a decent job. And especially for a smartphone priced at the £350 price point, you get a lot of camera there. Now, one camera they could have just omitted, not put in the OnePlus Nord at all, is that 2 megapixel macro camera. It's pretty much pointless, it doesn't produce any decent images, and you're much better if getting up close to an item to use the main 48 megapixel sensor. That's essentially the core of OnePlus in the OnePlus Nord. They've added some features which are just there on paper to make it look better to other devices on the market side by side. Earlier this year, we also compared the OnePlus Nord to the Google Pixel 4a. I think that the two are a great example of two completely different philosophies to making this priced smartphone. It means essentially that OnePlus have gone with everything they can on paper, as well as delivering a decent overall user experience, whereas Google went with as little as possible to deliver the good user experience. In terms of build quality, the glass back and the glass front are sandwiched between plastic, and I really quite like that different toned plastic in between the blue marble back and the front. I haven't had any issues, there's been no cause for concern because of that plastic build, but it does feel slightly lighter than the smartphone could have. Obviously, one thing to bear in mind is that the OnePlus Nord does not have any waterproofing, so don't take this to the swimming pool to take selfies of yourself. Speaking of selfies, the OnePlus Nord has a cutout on its OLED display for 2 selfie cameras, not one, but 2 of them. The main selfie camera is a 32 megapixel sensor. In good light, it produces great pictures with good color saturation and handles pretty much anything you throw at it. In low light, it suffers a little, but still, in its price range, it is a very good selfie camera. One of the most welcome inclusions in the OnePlus Nord is that of a wide-angle selfie camera. It's only an 8 megapixel sensor, but the fact that you can use this to take a group picture or get a lot more into your selfie is really, really good. I really like this feature, and it reminds me a bit of the Google Pixel 3 XL with its bathtub notch to house 2 selfie cameras. Well done to OnePlus to making sure that dream of the wide-angle selfie camera stays alive, and we hope this will come around in future smartphones as well. So, how to sum up the OnePlus Nord? It's a great smartphone, it's really good value for money, and it's a very tight software and hardware experience. Sadly, OnePlus have made a little too many trade-offs, and I would have preferred to see maybe less useless cameras and more value delivered in terms of maybe battery life or other features. This is a really good smartphone, and I have been using it and will be using it as one of my main devices, but it's not perfect. At the price of £350, it's an absolute bargain, and we can thoroughly recommend it. But be aware, it's not that perfect experience that some would expect. Anyway, that's our conclusion to the OnePlus Nord review after more than 3 months in 2020. If you have any comments or if you'd like to ask us anything more, just leave us a comment in the section below. And if you don't already, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. For now, thanks for watching and goodbye.